Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's on a Friday. That's a good note, right? Cheers to that. Today is our leadership board performance planning meeting. The last time we met was in September, right? If you recall, we met in Dr. Hernandez's office. And is it okay if I get started?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I noticed Ms. Castillo's not here. We went over a lot of data. We're going to go over some similar data points, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into the year as we've started off. We have some results for you, and we're going to share those results with you. We're also going to talk about what the plan is. As you all know, academics and school leadership developed a curriculum framework that they've been implementing, and so we're going to go deeper to see where they're at with that. We're also, if you recall, last time we talked about CTE and dual credit, right? So we're going to talk about what our CTE programs of study are. If you recall, last time we had all the programs, what schools they were at, the coherent sequences, and also the number of students enrolled. So that was a pretty illuminating piece about our CTE program. And remember, we said that we have these pieces, these flyers, to inform students and parents of, for example, what are some courses or what are some certifications that students can get, and also what's the pay? How much is this person or this type of profession pay? Which is really a hook that we can utilize for parents and for students, as well as interest. We'll also talk about the PSAT, SAT program, kind of define what it is, and then talk about dual credit programs. I believe that we've talked about the dual credit piece. It's stipend or incentive for teachers. We believe it's going to be very effective in terms of recruiting dual credit. But we're also going to share with you the amount of money totally that we receive, or that students receive, right, in the free tuition and books and everything else. So we'll share that by campus. And finally, we're going to talk, if you recall, we started the strategic plan journey some time ago, right? And we now have, remember, the board approved the strategic goals back in August. And in November, we were to come to you with the goal progress measures for each of the 5 goals. Today, we're going to share with you those goal progress measures for each of the strategic plan goals. We'll then continue and talk about what's our next steps. So, this is our team. Got a little bit bigger since September. I just want to tell you, this is an amazing team, board members. Our synergy is amazing. And this year, with this group, we do see that our achievement is going to increase exponentially in the last couple of years. Again, we spoke to the Lone Star Governance Goals 1, 2, and 3, and the locally developed goals 1 and 2. Local developed goal, if you remember, was looking at the Net Promoter Score. In other words, what's our face like? What's the Edgewood brand like in the area, right? Do they recommend us? Do they not? What are they concerned? So on. I was sharing with the team this barbecue that we had this past couple of days would have been an excellent time to capture how people feel about Edgewood, right? So we have to look at those opportunities. We have to look at the events. Edgewood has several events throughout the year where community members, parents, and students attend. The next one, of course, is the student life readiness skills. That piece is going to be rolled out, and I think Mrs. Lance will be talking to that also. So those are our strategic goals. Of course, our SGS, Systems of Grade Schools, North Star goal is that we will have A and B campuses by June 2028. We started off this year meeting our first goal with the 4 campuses, and then we're going to be going up by 4s until we hit all of them. Okay, so as you know, we had our board priorities If you recall previously, these were our goals, but the priorities are really important because they cover every aspect of the district, from focus on students, families, operations, HR, and of course, finance. So we're keeping those board priorities front and center as we go ahead and go through these goals. And Ms. Salinas will kind of explain how we're going to be reflecting back on those priorities as we go forward with the strategic plan. If you recall last time, that Tuesday, immediately after our board presentation, we had an SLT meeting. And we're doing the same thing. We'll be presenting to the SLT in this room on November 15th. And December 1st is our next DLT, our district leadership team, where we have all the principals, assistant principals, coaches, coordinators, everybody from across, directors across the district come, and we'll share that piece along with the finance piece that we had last time. We weren't able to get it on the agenda this past time because we had a presenter, Libby Spears, came in. We're going to knock those two out on December 1st. Without further ado, Ms. Griselda Bazaldua, our Chief of CCMR and Student Information, will give you some information on the demographics. This is an update from the last time that we presented. Ms. Bazaldua.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. So now that we have our frontline system up and running, we're able to keep our demographics up to date on a daily basis. This was as of November 8th, which was Tuesday. So we are currently sitting at a total enrollment of 8,169 students. And so you'll see the breakdown from early childhood all the way to 12th grade. This data system is on Data Suite, so we work in collaboration with Frontline. I do a manual feed for now. We're working on a process to get that to be an automated feed so that the data will feed automatically on a nightly basis from Frontline into On Data Suite. On Data Suite is basically just another way of looking at the same data, so it's organized in a much easier way for principals, instructional coaches, teachers to look at it in a different way. So here we have our demographics organized by our female and male students, and then we have it by ethnicity and race. And then we have our student data organized by our student programs. This is very important for when we get to our accountability and also for our funding. So as we're getting close to submitting our snapshot data, snapshot was based on the last Friday in October, which this year was October 29th. So although that date has passed, we still have some time to clean up that data, and then I do our submission on December 6th. So we have our data quality meeting, which follows every 6 weeks and precedes all of our PEEM submissions. So our campuses have been watching these numbers very closely, which is why I've been uploading it on a daily basis, so that if you click on any of these numbers, the campuses can then drill down to their campus, look at the student list, and make sure that all of their coding is correct. Here we have our other indicators, such as at-risk, foster care, and so forth. And then this one's a really important one, our economically disadvantaged, which has a big impact on our accountability and our funding, and then our homeless students as well.
Can you go back to that last slide? Thank you. Go back one. Special education, ladies and gentlemen, you recall back in August we had a corrective action plan that we took to the board. That corrective action plan, we received word from them in September, and they stated that all of our information in our district improvement plans meet the guidelines that they were requesting. I just want to kind of give you that piece regarding special ed. So everything's intact, we're good to roll.
I also want to note that this economic disadvantage total 93.81, we have to code our students individually by, it's a form that notes the household totals as far as income and how many people live in the household. So our campuses have done a great job of coding those, and this is the highest rate that we've had, at least in the past 5 years that we've been tracking. So our campuses are doing a great job of getting that data in. And now I'll pass it over to
One question
Dr.
before you came through. You have over here 8,169 student total, but over here on the student demographics, you only show 7,869.
These are the number of students that are Hispanic.
Okay, okay, I see. Didn't think about
I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is, this particular function on data suites is really a powerful tool. My thoughts are that hopefully in January, we'll be presenting directly from on data suites for a lot of our data. Dr. Sill?
Good morning, board members. I have the pleasure of being able to frame for you our next topic, which is assessment strategy. And you know, back in the spring and early summer, we began to ask ourselves this question: why an assessment strategy? And some of our key findings when we took a look at the previous year, we knew we had an assessment calendar, but we knew that there were some interruptions to the fidelity and implementation of that assessment calendar. We also knew that we had some of our students who were testing online and some of our students who were testing on paper. And with the new START assessment, we know all students are expected to take that assessment online unless it's designated by a committee member otherwise. And then another key finding was that we assessed, but we really could not name or articulate how we interpreted that data. So we asked ourselves this next question: are we prioritizing teaching and learning? Well, what does that mean, right? Are we keeping the main thing the main thing? And the main thing is the daily instruction, the daily practice that our students have in the classrooms. And so every time that we administer an assessment, we have to take into consideration the impact that that has on a student's daily practice. We also ask this question: are students learning what they are supposed to be learning? So how do we use data to inform? How do we know that we are making progress toward our student learning outcomes? We use data to be able to inform. And here's the last question that we ask: are we teaching what we think we're teaching, right? So from the teacher, from the campus instructional coach lens, from the principal lens, we think maybe that we have rock solid practices in play. And when we get that assessment data back, the assessment data will tell us another kind of story. So we've got to go back and we have to evaluate, and we have to take into consideration what instructional practices have we put into play, what instructional practices might we need to refine, and what might we need to reconsider when it comes to our instructional resources. So one of the other commitments that we made, and we had a data day back in July 25th, where we brought all of our instructional leaders, including some of our teacher leaders, to the table, and we had this conversation about defining assessments in Edgewood. And Joseph and I started this back with TNCP, and we said, you know, we think we need some clarity around different assessment types. Why do we give them? And what are the assessments that we currently administer in Edgewood? So here are the 4 assessment types that we want to share out with you today. We give diagnostic or universal screeners in Edgewood. Some of those include our beginning of year, middle of year, end of year assessments. They give us a good indication of growth over time. That includes, and you'll hear a little bit about that today, NWA MAP is one of our universal screeners. We also use M-Class as another tool that we implement here in Edgewood. In addition to that, we have instructional assessments, and these are the assessments that we administer from one date, beginning date, to an end date, and we look at how students have progressed over that particular unit of study. Those are called our district-based assessments, or DBAs. You'll hear more about that today. And that really gives us a good indication in terms of what we might need to reconsider for reteach. And so we have just finished our second round of DBAs, and we're excited to see some instructional growth with our kiddos. We also administer predictive assessments. We are finishing up the window for STAR interim assessment next week, and we're excited again to be able to see how we compare to the region, what do our schools look like in comparison to one another, and again, that is going to give us a prediction in terms of how students will perform on our end-of-year assessments. And then lastly, we do have our evaluative assessments, which include STAR and the end-of-course exams that our students will engage in. And again, this is going to measure how students do on the grade level standards that they're expected by TEA, by the state, to perform. Any questions before we jump into our data? Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
With the STAR test, you know, the new one, I guess, the changes that have come in. How do you integrate, you know, what you're doing over here, the assessments, everything else with the new expectations, and to see whether, you know, you're going to be covering all that stuff in a way that they're going to be tested?
So really important for us to, thank you for the question, for us to ground ourselves in what we know to be true. That the rigor of the assessment is not harder. It is not a harder test. It is the same standards that we are assessing students on. What is different are some of the assessment types. 25% of the assessment will be these new assessment types that students are being exposed to. The work that we're doing as an academic team is to ensure that our assessments are in alignment with STAR 2.0. So 25% of our assessments are written based off of the new STAR types. So our coordinators, as they design assessments, they take that into consideration. In addition to that, we've provided staff development and professional learning for our principals, our instructional coaches, and our teachers alike, so that we can ensure that it's also being lifted in the daily practice. Because it has to be inclusive in what kids see and what they practice on the daily. And there are different ways for us to engage in that. There can be low-tech options for kiddos, and there can be online versions for them to engage in that type of practice.
Dr. Silva did an excellent job covering the why for the assessment pieces, what type of assessments we have. Remember, you saw at the very beginning we had diagnostic assessments that had beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year. We're going to be looking at our beginning of the year. I covered these in our workshops before, but I'm kind of giving you a closer view. We've had this gentleman here, Mr. Ruiz, has been kind of a person who's been guiding us on the metrics, if you will, the statistical analyses, and all of those components that we need to make sure that we have not only do we test them in the right environment, but once we get that data from every student in the district, we have to make sure that it's correctly interpreted and we have all of the data and we're solid on the validity and the reliability of the data. We have reading K3, M-class reading, and math K through 3 using NWEA MAP. Those two particular components allow us to see if students are on grade level, to diagnose their reading ability and their mathematical prowess. And let's take a look at our beginning of the year. As a result of bringing Mr. Ruiz on board, I've worked with him, and some of those pieces that we had to make some slight adjustments with some of our numbers initially from the Lone Star Government Schools. And the first ones we're going to cover are early childhood reading data. This does look familiar to you. Our BOY is at 33%, and I want to say that the BOY for M-class reading includes both M-class reading in English and also M-class lectura for Spanish, and we're able to combine them. Last year, M-class had a different way of analyzing our Spanish data. This year, they've aligned their Spanish cut points, our analyses, and aligned it to the reading in English. So we've completed those, and you can see our projections for 23 for this year is at 39%. And as we inch our way up to 52%. So let's go now to our grade 1 reading. Also, ladies and gentlemen, inside your packets, you have the reading components here. If you recall, the last time I presented the mathematics, right? I gave you the mathematics on the screen. Here are what students should be able to accomplish by the end of their kindergarten, first, second, and third grades. And this particular pieces are clear for reading. The other document that you have is the document that you saw on my last presentation for mathematics at the board workshop. And this also gives you what should students expect to learn at the end of kinder through third grade. Now, these pieces may be a tad bit, they go into some different levels of complexity as we go up through the grades, but you can see the themes are pretty much aligned as they go up, okay? So you have this, so these are the pieces that they're being tested on in the beginning of the year, not all of them, but those entry levels as we develop our students, as we continue teaching and completing our grade level assessments and curriculum instruction, we'll test them along the way. As I said, we'll have middle of the year and end of the year coming up. So 27% was our beginning of the year for grade 1 reading. This is going to be a lift of approximately 13 percentage points to get them up to 40. I do want to say, when we say 13%, we have to make sure that we understand that that's a significant increase, right? Statistically, significance is about 5%, right? And notice we're at 13. So the people studying around you have a huge task, but they're doing a great job of that.
So board members, just to kind of be clear, when you're looking at these numbers, we set them at the meets. Okay, there's different levels. You got approaches, meets, and masters. These numbers were tuned to meets. Okay, so we're not looking at approaches. We're more at the meets now. So that's what those numbers reflect, with the idea that that is closely more aligned to the meets. Makes sense? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Grade 2 reading, we're at 32%. And our lift here is not as dramatic as first grade, only 2 points, but I do see us increasing significantly on it. Doesn't mean that we're just going to go up for, oh, we got to pass this. No, the same amount of targeted instruction and support occurs at all grade levels. Now, this is our star reading. What we included is last year, our third grade star was at 26%. Coming in, our beginning of the year for third graders is at 33%. Okay. As you can see, our goal for this year was at 33%. Again, we have different groups of students in third grade, we have different teachers, as you well know, and we have different administrators. You can see we even have changes in our leadership team, Dr. Silva. And so we do feel very confident as we go forward. The next piece is the mathematics piece. And here we can see that mathematics across the state had a challenge across the board. You're going to see some differences as we go through the mathematics, kind of reflecting that charge. At the beginning of the year, our kindergarten, these are kindergartners, right? And this is the NWEA map. These particular assessments are done online. They're not paper pencil. So those kindergartners coming in, we're at 23. We want to shoot for a target of 31%, which is a lift of 8 percentage points. First grade mathematics came in at 17%. Our target is 22, 5 percentage points. And I do want to go back to a statement that Mr. Santoyo made. We want to make sure, are these SMART goals, are they attainable, right? And so we do believe that these goals are attainable. In this case, we have a 5 percentage point significant increase, but our goals go up every year. Second grade mathematics was perhaps more challenging. In this area, we're at 5%. Our goal is 17%. That's a 15% lift. This is the grade level that's going to be, again, we have a huge lift with this grade level. The team's gone out and, well, they'll tell you what they're doing. And you'll see some of the conversations, some of the challenges, and some of the successes that they have as they go through and address these specifically in those grade levels at those campuses. Third grade star mathematics, if you recall, last year, we were at 20% at third grade. This year, our beginning of the year is at 6%. So we got to climb them up to 26 percentage points. So mathematics is going to be a huge lift. Again, seeing the individuals that are there at the campuses, they're really gelling together, and you'll hear about that as we go forward. Remember, this was, by the way, when was the BOY administered? It was administered the last 2 weeks of August. So this is them walking in the door, getting settled, really for the first time. Last year, at the beginning of the year, different story. So this year, they're walking in, and that's where they're at, and that's where we're capturing them. Questions, ladies and gentlemen?
You meant the beginning of the year, right, when you say BOY?
Yeah, beginning of the year.
But I didn't see girl.
You can't say grow. You can't say grow.
Back to the reading, it was the first group. Well, to
What grade level? Here we
the
go.
kindergarten, there we go.
Yes.
This is the first group post-COVID coming back to school, because they never got pre-K.
Some did, not many, though.
Okay.
We did have some challenges with our pre-K enrollment during COVID, yes.
And the next one is the one where we have the heavy lift, right? And this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them were out as well as the second.
yeah,
grade.
yes.
Now,
Okay.
now I have to state this. So let's not get lulled into thinking, oh, 27%, so for sure we got 27%. This is based off of the beginning of year skills. So the end of year, the EOY, that assessment is a lot more difficult because now it includes all the things that
Everything
they've
they've gone through this year.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Everything here that you see, it's a cumulative assessment. So we're testing the very beginning of that part, and then they're going to, so as we move up, the test gets more difficult.
Right.
So,
I understand that.
So what does that mean for the two low math scores now, that are really low?
Now we go back to
What
the
does it
math.
mean
what does it mean?
for end of year?
It's the same thing.
It's the same
Math
thing.
scores.
Yeah, it's the same thing. We have to, there's a lot of work to be done. Yeah, and we're not saying that we're going to keep it 5%. They're going to target to see if we can increase that. to those
Why is it
levels.
so low? I mean, I know you say that this is the first 2 weeks of August.
No, across the state, mathematics took a huge drop across the state. Reading, we feel reading is kind of back up to par this year, actually, but mathematics took a huge hit.
But why is that?
To
Especially
illustrate
in the
that,
third grade, that's the one that's the one that concerns me. The mathematics dropped considerably, and what we have, 6 weeks off during the summer?
Dr. Silva?
sure, I mean, it's a great question, and I hope to illustrate that in a slide a little further down the line. But really what it gets down to is we're thinking about foundational skills that our kinder students are lacking that are now current second graders. And so when you go back and you think about number sense routines, if I were to ask Joseph, put your hands up, Joseph, okay, and I handed Joseph, a handful of candy in this hand, and then I handed him another handful of candy here, and I asked Joseph, tell me which is more, right? Joseph's mathematical brain probably could tell me this is more, right? But our kids are missing that number sense. It's called subitation, we'll talk about it a little bit more. And then I've got to be able to compare. If I am missing those skills that should have been developed in early kinder, it's going to impact me in second grade in big ways. So I hope to illustrate that a little bit
And
more.
what did you notice about Ms. Silva there? That's not something you can learn on a computer. That's almost explicit, hands-on, and unless you're direct taught that, so let's think about who those third graders
Is
are.
history repeating itself even without the pandemic? Are we, with or without the pandemic, are we seeing those numbers? Let's say in 2018, are we seeing those numbers?
No, not at all. So this second grader, right? Last year, the year before that, and the year before that, this student was in kindergarten. Non-existent for all practical purposes. That was first year of COVID. Second year of COVID, this kid was in first grade. So to try to illustrate what that does to a student, that's 2 years. Yes, sir.
Mr. Espinosa, the other thing you might want to look at, if you look at this document, and you look at, Dr. Silva gave you a real broad stroke on what those foundational skills are, but this is actually what they should be building on. So if you look at Kinder, she talked about number sense, but there's also things like understanding addition, as joining, subtraction, understanding, subtraction, and separating. That's a Kinder skill. Then go to first grade. So all those readiness skills, what we call, and actually we really start learning them down in pre-K, because you start understanding the concept of more and less and things like that. Colors are also considered math skills. You start seeing that when those things aren't developed and you come to me in second grade, as a teacher, what we're trying to get across to teachers is don't go back and reduce your expectation on the SE or the student expectation. You have to teach up to it, and you got to bring the kids up. But it takes a lot of work with 18 kids. A third. We have 6 that are on grade level and 12 that are not. That's what we're facing in almost the majority of our classrooms.
And by the way, I like the material.
Yes.
It's really good.
It helps you understand what they're testing. And Ms. Silva's, Dr. Silva's going to address this.
Yes, we'll go
Later
into a
down.
little detail to some of the
Your
things.
questions.
Yes, 'cause those are good
It just
questions.
stands out.
Oh, yeah, when I
It
saw
stands
that, it
out.
alarmed me too. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and math, it's.
5%,
it's
5%,
critical.
right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Are you seeing this, consistent in every school, every classroom? Or do you find it to be a little different in some schools and classrooms?
Well,
So can we answer with the next?
yeah,
Oh, no, that's.
yeah.
That's a good question, right? So
Yeah, there are
we see
pockets.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share.
Mr.
that with-
Basuto?
Okay, good question. See, it leads right into the next piece. Okay, so we talked about why do I use assessments, right? What do they mean? And there's different kinds. And what do you use them for, right? To inform teaching. Then we discussed about goals. Mr. Chavez walked us through, you know what, we have performance goals in kinder, first, second, and third, right? So then now what? So what we're doing here is I am going to describe a process. Okay, so I want you to focus on the process and the thinking it takes to go around and assess where we are as a school, okay? The last thing we ever want is to pray and hope and think that we're somewhere without doing the due diligence it takes to move a district goal, okay? So I want you to, let's focus on the process.
We did too much of that in the past.
So in this case, what we've done is we have data sets. And so we got to make sense of these data sets, right? And where are we as a district? So we talked about the M class, English and Spanish. We have district-based assessments, and we have MAP. Those are the data sets that we have available to us as of right now. Now, within this week, last week and this week and next week, we're going to add more data to this process. We don't have all the data complete, so we couldn't include it into this. But I'm going to describe the process and how that would feel like once we have all the data, okay? The whole idea around this is because we need to really be streamlined on knowing who we need to help and support to answer your question. Are there pockets of excellence? Are some schools really moving forward? Is this pervasive for everybody? And unless you really dig deep into the data and really start looking at all the schools and you start targeting, then you'll start uncovering some of those things. That's why you have to go through the process. I'm a big believer in you don't just hand people the data, you make them sift through the data, work through the data, because then they internalize it. We had a very good process yesterday at Rent, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Because from there, it kind of gives us an idea of where we are, and I'm going to kind of walk you through it. Okay, so I'm going to just describe what this process feels like. So here we have a second grade, and we have all our campuses listed. And the data that we're analyzing to this point was BOY, which is M-class reading, which is how kids come in at the very beginning, and then DBA1. DBA1 was, here's how much we've taught from the first day of school up until September 15-ish, which is about 6 weeks. And what we're assessing with DBAs is, here's all the things we've taught. Let's find out to see how much kids have learned of the taught concepts that we've introduced to kids, right? That's where we go back and see, do we need to go back and reteach, how we're doing, things of that nature. This one kind of tells you how kids are walking in the door on day one, okay? Nonetheless, we still have to make sense of all that data, right? So we put the reading pieces, BOY and DBA next to each other. Here's lectura in Spanish, DBA in Spanish in reading. So we have to be very thoughtful about this, right? Because we have to make sense of this data. Then over here on the far right, you're gonna notice we're gonna put the math, the BOY, how they walk in, and then how are they learning on what we're teaching, the DBA, right? So you're using different data sets, you're trying to determine. Now, we know and understand that there's gaps. So instead of trying to address everybody, which is impossible because we don't have enough resources, we try to see where are the variances. By variance, I mean, when you look at a distribution curve, who is way left from the group? Who is really lagging from the group? So we were kind of taking that approach. So let's take this column here, for example. You have ups and downs, different peaks, and there's different reasons for that, right? Could be that maybe last year there was no teachers there, and so they had vacancies all year long, so that group of kids really didn't get the quality instruction they got there. Then they move up to second grade, and now they're low. In other cases, that team over there was really, really strong. They did a really great job, so then that group walks in really high. So there's different reasons behind this. So what we do is we started looking at the data and say, okay, who's the outlier? And then anytime, so obviously that 8% stands out. So we highlight it. 15%, 22%, 12%, those are outliers. They're not part of the norm. They're like so far that we have to color code them. So we color code them. Did the same process for DBA reading. Who are the outliers? Pretty much everybody's in sync, but those are the outliers. Then we did the same thing here, 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 and here. Pretty soon you start noticing patterns. You start noticing, right? What does this mean, right? Then the last piece was, after we did this grade level by grade level, we did it for second grade, third grade, all the way up to high school. Color-coded variances, outliers, things of that nature. We're painting a picture of where the schools are at. We're kind of painting a picture of where they're going to land at the end of the year. We don't wait. We intervene now. But we got to have a process. The last piece is the qualitative piece. It's the information behind the data. Yes, black and white is there, but there was always other information behind the scenes. That's where we go talk to our content coordinators who speak to our coaches, who our coaches then work with our teachers, and we ask, here's what we noticed from the data. What do you notice? And tell us the story behind the data. And we capture that information. It could be that at this particular school, you know, Mr. Basurto, they have a brand new team, brand new teachers they've never taught before, and we're struggling with them. Could be over here, we have no teachers, there are vacancies, and so we're even trying to fill the position. It just depends, right? I mean, it depends. There's always a story behind the story. And so we try to capture all that. And so we're very thoughtful and deliberate about how we did it, and we went across every grade level. Okay? Now. Yes?
Can you go back to the first slide? Could you explain the triangle?
Oh, yes, and thank you, Ms. Owens. Triangles, by the way, represent our partner schools, our operating partner schools. Okay? Operating partner. But we assessed everybody. Okay? Going through this process, by the way, it took time. It was myself, Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Silva, we sat down, and we even sat down with Dr. Matkins and Mr. McElvain, and we kind of went through this process, grade level by grade level, looking at all these variables, trying to make sense of it, and then we took the story behind the story, right? And it started kind of making sense to us, right? And then the next step, I'm going to show you a table. And this is a more blown up version. You notice how the color codes just kind of start standing out, right? You quickly start noticing patterns and trends of where we probably have to go and intervene, right? And then there's the story behind the story.
I'm sorry, could you go back? What do the gray pieces represent?
Gray pieces represent that there was no data represented for whatever reason. It wasn't captured. Either there was an issue with the reporting or something or other. I'll tell you, for example, and we didn't put it here, WISE, who is an operating school, is using a different curriculum, and they never did our DBAs. So their DBAs are blank. However, I still marked them as a priority school because the data we did have for them, which was the BOYs, were low across the board. So even though I didn't have any data here, I knew, I was like, wait a minute, they're walking in low, so I'm pretty sure they're gonna be low. So it's a priority school. And I'll show you in a second. Now here's again, in the blown up version, the story behind the story. So concerns with tier one instruction, check text-to-speech on math. Concerns with tier one instruction, demonstration of growth in reading and math. So it just depends. You know, for example, at Perales, in second grade, the story here is that first grade cohort that just came up had subs all year. So it's not that the teacher is not effective in second grade at Perales, it's just that the group that they inherited had substitutes pretty much all year long, and we couldn't fill the vacancies. So all those things matter. And the reason why I say it is because how you support the school will matter depending on what the situation is, right? You assume a lot of things.
So, Mr. Ruto, and to the superintendent, how do you use this with the community or, you know, my family, well, all of our families, right? Hey, what's going on? Why are the scores so low? Or anybody who, it's hard for me to say, well, it's the substitute teacher, or it's a first-time teacher, or the teacher's really good, but the kids came from 2 years prior, did, you know, poorly. How do you, I mean, I know you guys are working hard on this, and you're really getting down into the data, but it's frustrating to see it year after year after year. You know?
So hopefully after this presentation, you'll come away a little more at ease and knowing that there is a plan. So I kind of, because I'm going to get to that.
Well,
and
it's
some
just
of the
that
interventions.
right away, what do they do? It's perception. Oh, the teachers suck. Sorry, I don't mean to say it that way, but
Yeah.
that's what they say. And they want to beat us up, that's all. As a district, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
even though, I mean, I think I got a decent education because of my teachers, right? And I rarely saw substitute teachers. I think I saw my teachers at all my years here. I saw my actual teacher. I didn't have this substitute problem that we're seeing more now, I think, right? But it's frustrating that they want to beat us up.
But Frank, this is the way I approach it. I hate to say I use an excuse, but there is an excuse to it. We've come out of a period of time that has not been seen before. Yes, we had problems before, and they need to understand that it's going to take a little bit of time. That we have the problems, we know the problems, we're working on them, and we are trying to solve them as expedient as we can without denegating the students' learning. Put that in more lay terms, I don't know, but that's the way I approach it. Because they're gonna get upset, no matter what you say, they're gonna be upset.
Mr. Mills, I think what I would recommend to you is when someone approaches you with that, acknowledge that there's challenges. You don't have to get into every detail. I acknowledge that there's challenges in the schools, but after today and after future meetings like this, I hope that you'll be able to walk away with at least 3 nuggets of, but here's what we're doing about it. And then sometimes you just gotta walk away from it.
And I sit in these meetings with the nonprofit part of it, and they have those comments, and it just frustrates me. But like I said, I like this because I can actually tell somebody that this is specific to what our kids need.
So thank you for affirming that, because we had this discussion, Mr. Chavez and I said, you know, when we get up there in front of board members, we need them to walk away with at least give them 3 to 5 bullets of, here's just basic, these are not exhaustive, by the way, but these are the broad strokes of what a kindergartner should walk out with. You should be able to say, yeah, we're struggling in kinder because we're still developing their number sense. We're still developing their understanding of subtraction and addition.
Some of this were, they're writing complete sentences, it's like, man, I didn't start writing until I was in 5th grade, I think.
So
But
these
no,
are
it's great.
important,
That's awesome.
these are important, and for our folks too, I mean, we work with our board on these things, but this is your typical constituent out there. I don't know what's being taught, so because I don't know, I'm gonna fill in the gap, and normally I'm gonna fill in the gap with this is wrong, this is wrong.
Yeah.
So we have to help people come up with a new narrative and a new way of talking about this work.
I like it, and I know you guys put a lot of work into it, but I really, it's a good tool.
It's a focus, right? And it's a mindset.
Can I add something to that? Something that we're doing as an academic services team as well is spreading the word through our literacy events. And so our coordinator is up in front of our families and really talking about what those expectations are. So really trying to inform the community around what should your student be learning, and then modeling through some action steps. But I think that it is a collective effort on the part of campuses and instructional leadership to really inform the community about those skill sets that our students need to know at different grade levels.
We're going through the grant initiatives with the foundation, and we're looking at all the applications, and that's what I like. I'm scoring higher on those where, even though it's not directly as far as academic performance with our kids, it's more the community, which is a big part, so it's a good thing.
Do you mind me sharing the story you shared with me the other day about that one application you chose not to? Okay, so this is why these are important, because when we inform you, it changes your way of, your perception of seeing things. So Mr. Espinosa sits on the foundation, and they were evaluating the grant applications from teachers. There was one teacher who was asking for money to be able to work with students on their, I think it was their academic plans.
Right.
But after Mr. Espinosa heard the presentation at the workshop that we now have Frontline and what Frontline's gonna do, he felt like, given that we only have so much money, we're gonna assign the money to other areas, because based on what he learned, you'll be able to get this information anyways through our new Frontline system. So why award this grant when I can award a different grant for a different need that we still can't fill yet? So again, the more we inform people, the more we give them basic information, then the better understanding they'll have to support us. Because I think sometimes people don't support. One, because that's been the narrative, let's be honest, for years, that people want to shoot at it first. But we also haven't done anything to help them change that by giving them new language, and that's what we're doing today. That's why we have these performance planning meetings, for you guys.
Yeah. So we're building a case, right? Making sure we're very strategic about where we take all this information, make sense of it. Here's another example. Now it's third grade view, same process. We went through it. Remember, and I'm gonna say it again, never hand people the data. Make sure they work through the data so they internalize it and they really understand it, because then you own it. I think that's part of the problem sometimes, is sometimes we just want to give them to them here. Well, then they don't really understand the data. And so therefore their plans aren't strategic. But certain things, like, let's name it. What right away stands out to you? HBG third grade, like that, right? And so I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Remember I mentioned WISE? How they're an operating school and they don't give DBAs because they're in a different curriculum? Because remember, when we do DBAs, you're assessing the curriculum that we're teaching. So they're at a different pace. So we don't have any data. However, we as educators know and understand, if they're walking in low across the board, then they probably need to be targeted, right? Even though I don't have any data to prove it, but I'm pretty sure, unless something miraculously happens, this school needs to be a targeted school. So we kind of make those decisions based on information that we already have. Sometimes it stands out just like this, and sometimes it's other data that we have to take into account, right? So we go through every grade level, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way up to high school. Take copious notes. Remember, there's always a story behind the story. So look at it WISE. New team to third grade, and they're implementing a new curriculum, brand new, and they're struggling with it. And we, try to coach them out of it, but the operating school decided to do it, and so be it. But we took copious notes because we do have intervention pieces that need to be done with fidelity. And here's the other thing: the elephant in the room is, we talk about programs, but the programs are only as good as well as you implement them. I can give you the best program in the world, but if you don't implement them to fidelity, then what kind of results are you going to get, right? All those pieces matter. So we start putting all this information together, and we start stating the case for the schools. So now I'm going to show you two arriving to what? Yes, sir.
Before you go any further, on the third grade review, how do you treat like these high numbers on Loma Park and on Roosevelt on the lectura? I think it's lectura, yeah, BOI. The 86 and the 81%.
Oh yeah, those are like the great pockets. So that goes back to his question and point. Because don't assume and think that just because not everybody's low. I mean, we have pockets of excellence in this school. We have great teachers who are doing great work, as demonstrated in some of our results. So not everything is doom and gloom. There is pockets of excellence.
Are you digging deep to see, like, to quantify? Because maybe it's just that, not that we can't do that, but it just really stands out. So, I mean, it's good, but do you have to treat it differently because they're so high? You're not going to back off and say, oh, It's
Yes and no, and let me
opportunity.
answer that question. Yes, I think I know where you're going with this. Let me see if I can answer the question. So yes, right? So, like I said, data's relative, and it's not a broad stroke where you're gonna just decree everything, but everything has a pattern, right? So, obviously, if I would be alarmed if this group all of a sudden started regressing with DBAs, because they did walk in high, right? So you have to look at it in different ways. Las Palmas, I'll give you another one. They came in low in a couple of areas at the BOY, not showing here, but Las Palmas came in low in some of the schools, but we know that year to year, they do a good job of bringing the kids up because they have strong teachers in certain grade levels. So we know that. So even though, I'm gonna make this one up, second grade, they walk in low, but they have a strong team that year to year, they always show progress. So we're not gonna worry as much about them because we know that the teachers and the team that's there is great. Now, on the other hand, if this group that walked into this grade level has a brand new team, well, yeah, we're gonna monitor it. Just because they walk in high, we don't assume they're gonna stay high, right? So yes, data's relative. You always look at it in different ways.
So another question, just, do you have your own, just like in a business, right? We have our forecast, we have our actuals, and then you have your reforecasting, actual to budget, or budget to actual. Are you guys kind of doing that too? Like to say, you know what, I think we're gonna end up at 50% instead of 40%. You have your own, I mean, not that you're sandbagging, right? You're not sandbagging, right? But anyway.
Not like you guys.
Yeah. But is that,
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
okay.
That's exactly, you read my mind. When you're saying I'm smiling because that's exactly, as a matter of fact, when I interviewed here, I recall they asked me that question, and I said, I don't ever go into a school year hoping and praying. I said that to you guys when I opened this up. I don't hope and I don't pray. I like to have evidence to determine where we're gonna land. Sometimes we may not always hit the goal, but we're gonna know going forward, because we're gonna do everything in our power to intervene sooner rather than later. And we're not gonna hope and we're not gonna pray, no, we're gonna know. And so but knowing is doing the work. See, this takes time. It takes getting your hands
Well,
dirty and really,
it's like a moving target, and you have to do
and it's constant.
scenarios, yeah.
And it's
And
constant.
scenarios on it.
So for example, I did this for DBA 1 and BOY. Guess what now? DBA 2s are coming in. And interims are coming in. I'll speak to them a little bit. So I'm gonna now take that information with the team and we're gonna add it to the story to see how
It's
we're
just a lot of
progressing.
work. I keep saying that.
It's constant. You know what? That's the thing. It's constant. You never let it go.
Yeah.
Yes.
How much of this is fair and appropriate to share with families? And you've got kids coming into a school, how much, how much is shared as to, the challenges and how the family can support, and this is what we're striving to do? How much of that? Because to Frank's point, if I
So-
would have known this, maybe I would have put my kids in.
So I think that's why people do it more at the individual level. When a kid gets their individual report and then we have those parent nights and the teacher says, here's where Miko did well, here, 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 here. So that's incumbent on the parent to know where their kid's at any given time. I wouldn't necessarily advertise DBAs to the community because we do them every 6 weeks. So that narrative may change quickly. So by the time you even get the word out and get people to understand it, you already got another data set already coming in.
But if you do it individually, which I understand, so parents know right away, we have some challenges, and this is how you can support us, and then maybe there's some
Yes, sir.
application that we're doing, so that the parents aren't surprised at the end of the year, like, what happened?
That's correct.
You know?
I'm going to share something with you about interims, and I think that kind of answers a little bit of what you're speaking to. Okay, I'm going to show you a document that will have access for kids to share with their parents. Okay?
Mr. Soto, if I can add, I'll put on my principal hat for just a minute. As a principal, things that I would do is bringing it back to my pláticas. So coffee with the principal, principals have the opportunity to put that data and be transparent with the community in terms of what our goals are and how are we meeting those goals. We're also going to provide some guidance. We've brought back iStation this year. So we're going to provide some guidance to our elementary principals in terms of how they can go back and re-communicate to their teachers and to the community what are our goals and what's our contribution to that goal. I think it's important for our community to be aware of that, both at the individual level for their own child and how my child is progressing, that also what's my contribution to the school community. It makes me think of, you know, coming off of the campus at Perales. Sure, we were rated a B, almost an A. We were rated a B, but what work is it going to take for us to remain a B campus?
That's right.
There's a lot of work that is going to be required, not just on the part of our teachers, but also the accountability for our students, and then what is the family contribution to that as well. So I would offer that those are ways in which principals can bring that back at the campus level to communicate to the community. I think about being grassroots with parents. Parents appreciate the transparency, and then that's when we get the community buy-in. Parents will then begin to shift and begin to better understand their own family contribution to a community, a school community, and then the bigger picture of Edgewood ISD.
And isn't that school an example of a school that kind of dipped and struggled
Yes.
and then rose up?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, you know, something was implemented, something was changed.
Well, you're probably gonna hear this later when Dr. Mack gets on, but, I think the other part is every individual principal, which is why we put so much support into the principal development. I was in a meeting 2 weeks ago and with someone from TA, Mr. Landry, and the comment he made was the reason Perales did so well was because Dr. Silva knew every kid's information. That's 450 kids to 400, depending on the day. But that's a lot of kids' information. So just think about how much you can store in your own, you know, just to be practical. So our principals have to remember their kids' information and motivate the teacher to see it, and motivate the teacher to keep building. Because a lot of this, what you don't see is the teacher capacity. You might have said it in the beginning, but we are still working on teacher capacity. So it's not, the comparison of us and other districts isn't quite a wise expectation to make, or comparison to make, because we're still trying to develop our teachers while still having them teach the kids the expectations that they're still trying to understand. And that's just understanding it. Then comes engagement. That's a whole different thing. Unless we want teachers to stop like lecturing all the time. I'm not saying lecturing, but lecturing all the time for little kids, for high school kids, they clock out. They're not listening. So that's the big difference. Is the principal is the main factor. Principal and teacher quality are the two most important things you have.
Dr. H, if I might add, this is also one of the schools that the board took bold action on to implement the A strategy. And there was a lot of heartache that came with that, because every teacher, remember, had to reapply for their job. And so, and there was a lot of training that was poured into the campus. And so these are the kinds of things as we start to look at campuses that, as a senior leadership team, we weigh in terms of what really bold action do we need to take in schools, even if it's something that's hard for us to have to kind of deal with in terms of the community.
If you recall, we did that program at both Gus Varsity University School and Perales, and they're coming up on their third year. So while we looked at teachers, we looked at their scores in the past 3 years and had certain thresholds that we selected, they're also receiving a $10,000 funding. So we've got to track talent. Bottom line, every guy in business will understand that completely.
Well, but, okay, so going back to our partnerships, for example, I'm sure that the expectation is higher, or we need to really put more pressure on partners there.
Right.
So is that, are we doing that?
Yes, right here.
I'm not doubting that.
That's why she's here.
But, not that they're perfect, right, those schools, but I expect them to be.
But we don't renew their contract.
Right,
That's
right.
simple. So that's why they made the distinction of pointing out who's a partner school.
No, I'm glad you did that, because I was looking at it and I thought, well, why are these schools with the notes, for example, the tier 1 instruction, or I think that's what.
Yeah, tier 1 instruction.
Right.
But I thought that should already be, that's part of our agreement or MOU or contract.
It's a contract.
And I'm sure their donors are wanting to see some results as well.
Schools like A&M San Antonio, they have donors, and they have
Oh, yeah.
expectations. And so, board, I want to connect this for you for some of the structures that you'll find, thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Schmitz. You'll find that our work requires us to sometimes make some very bold decisions. In fact, Tuesday night, I'm going to talk to you guys about one operating partner in particular. So this should connect for you, give you sort of
I
an
was
advance.
wondering
We're
if
gonna
it's
have a
that time
conversation
where
about one.
you need to,
We're gonna have a conversation about one on Tuesday.
thank you.
Okay, so now what, right? So I went through the process, remember, it's about the process. I didn't go through every single grade level, but just you kind of get a good idea of how we process and we take all this information and make sense of it. Then we come up with a way to summarize the information, tallies. BOY data, anytime a school popped up in BOY, we tally them in red. That means that you were low in one grade level at some point in reading, HBG, you get a tally every time they come up. If they were in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, whatever grade level that was, we tallied them up. Anytime a DBA,
Also, that's all,
the totals, so HBG, for example, came up low 4 times.
but it
In
could be
reading.
4 different grade levels, right?
Could be, that's correct. So we did tallies, right? And we kind of started putting the story together, and quickly, you can see who rises to the top and who needs support, right? Because the reality is we can't be everywhere, so we have to be very myopic and very focused on who and we need to target, correct? So we kind of captured all this information. The other piece that we also did was previous performance, because that does matter. So I added this here. We know that Perales has a strong foundation. They've shown and they've proven. And they're at 88. The other one that we saw was Las Palmas. Remember we told you we weren't because they tend to always bring the kids up, right? But others who were maybe like HBG, I worry about. Why? A lot of tallies, and their rating is 74, but it's not like a high rating. So they're a target school. So we use all this information to kind of paint a picture of where we believe things are right now. Okay? Did the same thing at the middle schools. And then we identified a list of schools. Here are the priority schools. You will know, we've already started the conversation with HPG. Ms. Silva went with Dr. Butler on Thursday to assess grade level by grade level, data trends, what they perceive things are working, not working, kind of capture a story to come up with an action plan, because time is of the essence. We're not going to wait. We got to act now.
So is this approach different from last year, year before?
I'll defer that to I wasn't there last year, so I would defer that to my
I think
colleagues.
it's a little more directive.
That's what it seems like.
That's what it needs.
That's what it seems like, so I just wanted to.
And then you have the two individuals that she mentioned, both Dr. Butler and Dr. Silva, just came out of principalships. Dr. Butler came from a high school, 3,000 kids. Ms. Silva, one of our own. And so there's some respect there from the principals, because this is somebody who just did this, right? So, and it comes with a lot of directness. So you will do this. And so they couple that with Dr. Mackins visiting, Mr. McElwain working with the secondary school. So yes, much more directive.
As we presented to you at the beginning of the year, the framework, the curriculum framework, the plan didn't work out to achieve, to work out the entire year. So that plan is especially difficult.
So yesterday, as a matter of fact, we were visiting Ren. And so we went through copious notes. They had their data wall up. It was very apparent to us that they had taken the time to really understand where they are, what their needs are. We listened, what's working, what's not working, what areas we can come in and support you. Because it's not also I got you, it's also how can we help you and assist you in improving, right? And so we had about an hour-and-a-half conversation with them yesterday afternoon. And now we're going to go back and follow up on Wednesday to do some walkthroughs to finalize that plan. And then we're going to work that plan from here until January. We're not going to wait. Because then in January, we'll get another set of different data sets and see where we are.
Oh, okay.
So you got to keep going. Remember I told you it's a constant, you don't just do it one time. You have to continually monitor. And then at the end of the year, we'll have a better understanding of where we're going to land, going back to your prediction. Okay? So here's a general plan. So we're going to identify teachers of need. So we identified the schools. We're going to visit the schools. Ms. Silva, do you want to kind of quickly describe how your HBG meeting went with the elementary level?
Sure. So based off of the comparative report that Mr. Barsuto prepared, we knew that we needed to get principal voice. That was going to be very critical in developing a plan of action. And so Dr. Butler and I had a very intimate and organic conversation with Principal Canales, and we went grade level by grade level to engage in a SWOT analysis. And from there, Principal was able to, from her lens, identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Based off of that conversation, our next step, and we went yesterday to visit with Principal Canales, and we did a practice run of our observation tool with the intention of next week going in together with the academic team and conducting another round of walkthroughs together with Principal and her leadership team to then finalize our coaching cycles. And we're also leveraging TNTP, some of the partners, instructional partners that you all have approved to work with Edgewood to engage in that work. What we're really trying to develop here is an articulated plan of action that we then can take and replicate at some of the other schools that we've identified. HBG being the highest priority school that we began with. And so this gives us an opportunity collectively as the Office of School Leadership and the Academics Department to really target our services to HBG. So very appreciative of Principal Canales and her welcoming us with open arms to say this is a collective effort, we're ready to collaborate, and we're ready to get our hands dirty with our teachers and to be in service to our kids. At the end of the day, that is exactly who gets impacted by us taking action or not. And so we're excited about what's to come for HBG. We have a prediction and a timeline to begin our coaching cycles with teachers come December.
And so I want to caution us, it's not a broad stroke, here's how we fix everybody. It's identifying based on need in that story. Remember, maybe the data is low because the cohort came in low, but they already have a strong teacher group there. So that support's different versus a cohort that walks in who has a bunch of brand new teachers. Well, that support's that's a whole nother different thing. So we have to understand what those needs are first before we can take action. So that's why we identify teachers in need and then we differentiate based on what they need. Okay? Operator managed schools are responsible for implementing the plan of action to address performance concerns, and that's through Ms. Salinas. Yes, sir?
Where you find new teachers, is there a little more attention, that's being placed on them so you're ready to jump in a little quicker if things aren't trending the right way? Are those targeted at all?
Absolutely.
Just make sure they're doing okay?
Yes, absolutely. So different levels of support for our teachers come from campus-based supports with principal, assistant principal, instructional coach. They are on the front line every day to support our new teachers. In addition to that, we've also worked with our coordinators to begin supporting some of those new teachers. The shift is now based off the data, who do we then need to target? Because even some of our new teachers and our veteran teachers may be in more need of assistance. And so we really now begin to target our supports based off of data.
Let me give you an example that's not here, based off of yesterday's conversation. 8th grade math at Wren needs extra support. And we found that out. Yes, the data told us that, but then also hearing the conversation. Well, that 7th grade cohort group that came up didn't do very well in 7th grade. And so, in addition to, teachers were teaching Algebra 1, now they're teaching 8th grade math. So it needs to be a lot of content support. So the takeaway yesterday was, okay, 6th grade math, 7th grade math are doing better this year at Wren. We feel better about it now. We're not going to see the 23% approaches that we saw at Wren last year. We're not going to see that this year. It looks like our 7th graders are going to do better as of right now. 8th grade needs to be a concern, so that's going to be a focus. But you don't know that unless you get your hands dirty and you get into the data and really uncover, and then you go talk to the schools. And then now you know how to act and how to interview. I'm just giving you an example. Secondary action, plan of action, I kind of already described it. And here's a sample of some of the things we may do. When we go visit with them, we have some ideas, but it's a collaboration. And so we'll sit down with them and figure out ways in which our content coordinators, so for example, our content coordinators are going to go to Wren twice a week to help support the planning and the PLCs at the campus. Because Wren is one of our target schools, and so we're going to do what we can to help support them. High school, same thing. We know like Ms. Odie, who's working with the language arts, has been working diligently over at at Kennedy, English 1, because we identified early on. Since September, we've known about it, so we're there. We don't wait. We're constantly just monitoring. So, and then again, it's recursive. It's constantly addressing what do we need to do next, what is the data telling us. Now I mentioned, this is just BOY and DBA. We are just completing DBA number 2. We're finalizing the data. We're gonna now take that data, add it to the existing data, and continue painting the story of where we are. So we're gonna go back and redo the data analysis. Hopefully this afternoon, we'll have some time to sit down and start color coding and then triangulating to what we already have and seeing if we're seeing some trends, growths, things of that nature. The other piece now that we're gonna have, star interim. We've never done it here. This is our first year doing it. Online, TEA, and it gives you a progressive growth relative to where they're gonna be at the end of the year. And that's happening now as we speak. So we're gonna also look at that information and see how that data looks. And now you compare it to this and you compare it to the other data, and let's see what that tells us.
How fast do you get the results for that?
Actually, we're already getting them now. So as soon as they submit them, we get them that afternoon. They're already uploaded. But I'm waiting for everybody to finish testing so we can have a full.
That's gonna be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Here's an example of what the reports may look like. And this is just dummy data, but what it is, it'll give you by region, district, and campus. So we can see who's ahead, behind, and then we take it with the DBA data, and then we see, is it really what it's telling us? It also gives us predictability of who's going to be approaches, meets, and masters. It's a prediction. Going back to the predictions. And so we'll look at that to see how we're predicting, and then the other step I'm going to do is I'm going to compare it to last year's scores and see if we're already on point, ahead, or behind. So we use all this different information to kind of focus our attention where it needs to be focused. Then the other thing about the interims, we're now going to be able to go back and look at by standard. So if we haven't taught it, then it makes sense that it's low. But if we taught it and it's still low, then obviously we need to go back and reteach it. And what is it that we got to do differently as a district? And in some cases, that just may be a campus thing or it may be a district thing. But those are the things that we can do now with these new interims coming in. And we're not waiting. It's November and we still can intervene. Individual reports, here they are. These are the reports that we can make available to students that they can take home to mom and dad. And this is where they are relative to, as of today, doesn't mean that that's what they're going to be because they still have time. But as of now, they get a snapshot of where they are relative to that assessment towards the end of the year. It's like a prediction. Okay?
Have you found that the new method of testing is an improvement from what you had before?
Here?
You don't like it, or?
Well, I mean, I like it because I really enjoy seeing how right away, real-time data, I already know how we are compared to the region. So if, I'll throw this one out. So let's say last year the region was ahead of us by 20 points in 3rd grade math. I'm gonna make that up. And I'm looking at the interims and let's say we're 15 points behind. Well, that's good. That means we made up 5 points from last year. So I look at data differently, right? The other piece that I do like also is it's their assessments. One of the things that teachers always complain about is, oh, well, that's not a true assessment. That question is not right. And so this is from the state. And so they're vetted through the state. So this is as close to a STAR test they're going to get, right? Because they're all, the question we always get is, well, that's not really a state assessment question because you look at the question and they always want to poke holes at all the questions. This is coming from the state. And then the second piece, the third piece that I really, really like in reading and math, they're going to get the same. They're going to take another exam in January, February, and they take both data sets and they project growth, which is I think is pretty cool in reading and math. So we'll be able to take the test again before the real one and see how much growth they're making and what other intervention pieces we have to make before the real exam.
How much of a challenge do you think understanding the question is our kids are going to have? Because I know that, kids that have, I don't know, maybe different conversations at home because they have professionals sitting, at the breakfast table, the dinner table. I think that,
So yesterday, we started doing this. We started doing this yesterday. You'll notice here, and it's hard to see, but you'll notice it's a question, it'll tell you the standard, and it tells you how we did, how the region did, the district and the campus did, right? Overall. So you're able to compare yourself to the region and to the district, right? Say the region is at 70%, we're at 70%, so we're on pace. Say the region is at 70% and we're at 20%, then I know this question is a problem. So then I can click on that question, and it'll show me the actual question. I did that yesterday, and we were, the region, the district were really, really low on it. I think it was like 15%. It was random, one of the tests, I don't remember which one it was. I clicked on it, and it was that new Start 2.0 question. It was a drag and drop. It's where you click, and then they have to drag, and they have to pick one of the words. Well, the entire region and the district were at 15%. We all bombed that question for whatever reason. That's good information to have, because now we can turn that around, share with our coaches, who they can share with our teachers and say, hey, our kids struggle for whatever reason across the district with this question, and it's a drag and drop. So we can do something about it.
One of the things that we learned, some of us were at that training that they had over here at Jasper, was that they have a team that they select to be able to assess the questions, to make sure that they're relevant and they're put together in a way where more kids will understand. And I asked them, okay, where do you get this team from? How do you and they say, well, we get volunteers. And I'm wondering, do they ever approach the districts that maybe are have more kids or disadvantaged and say, hey, can we have some volunteers from yours, just so that they can let us know that maybe, hey, this question, our kids have never had that experience, so they don't even understand the question. And other kids might. So I'm wondering, do we get involved in that at all? In volunteering?
That's not been an opportunity that we have participated in, but I will say, going back to that point in terms of thinking about background knowledge that our kids may have or not have, we've had these ongoing conversations around how do we draw the connection. So yesterday we were conducting an observation in a classroom at Henry B. Gonzalez, and the teacher was teaching her heart out, and she was making all the right teacher moves. The upgrade would have been, how do we, instead of building the background knowledge over the plot diagram, how do we build the content knowledge that the kiddos need to understand and engage with the text that we're about to engage with in a read aloud? So if we're talking about a historical event, how do we build the content knowledge and the background knowledge that kiddo may not have, versus really being focused on a strategy, right? And so sometimes that will be the need that we as educators, we recognize that we're going to have to work harder and work smarter around, because it is a gap that we have to recognize. And it ties back to the moral and the equity imperative that we face every day in the Edgewood ISD. That's our lived reality. Yeah.
And one last thing is, please understand, it's not a matter of putting that kind of question in front of kids and drill and kill. That's not going to get you anywhere. Yes, here and there, so they're exposed to the question and they know how to respond. Get that. It's the thinking and the processing and the cognitive routines that you do in the classroom where kids talk about the content and make sense of it. That's where the key is. Then you'll introduce the question, so at least they get exposure. But to say that we give you a bunch of Start 2.0 questions and all we do is practice the different kinds, well, then how do they learn the content? It's not a test prep. It's processing, thinking.
Important in the past, probably some of the exams you took, and we all took when we were in school, was just fact recall. Very low level one learning. And even then, to be honest, remember tabs?
Oh yeah.
Tabs test, and then it went to what was it?
I memorized a lot.
And then star, and all the other ones. Very knowledge, just fact recall, low level. This is actually going to require them to talk. And let's be honest. Think about your own kid. How many people are actually talking to their kids and requiring them to think about what they answer? It's usually very direct. You want this? No? Okay, bye. Out. That's what we're getting. So it's a very different reality for our kiddos.
But the vocabulary is different.
Yes,
So
also,
there's a couple of words in that question
Oh,
that
yeah.
just throw you
Oh, yeah.
completely off.
Oh, yeah.
they'll throw adults off,
Like, what is that?
or an experience they don't have.
Yeah, so, but I would challenge us to find out, how do we get somebody out there that can, you know, kind of make it a more even field with some questions, like kids at this age, at least our kids, you know, they're not hearing this stuff. You know, and maybe our reading has to change, you know, but again, you know, if that's what they're being held accountable for, we sort of have to be able to compete at that level.
And that goes back to, and she'll speak a little, Dr. Silva will speak a little bit to it, but it goes back to using the materials that are vetted by the state that are high quality. We don't dumb it down.
Right. No, but I mean, but that's part of our curriculum.
Yes.
So we're bringing that into the classroom.
That's right.
And we're raising our kids up.
That's right.
But still, we got somebody
Yes.
in the game that's sort of making it an even playing field.
Representation, right,
Yes.
matters, so thank you for that.
Uh, So,
Dr. H alluded to this earlier when we talk about building the capacity of our teachers, and I just want to provide you with an overview of the work that we are engaged in and what's still to come. And so we really have in cycle one, as Mr. Chavez mentioned, our academic plan, we really have been focused on building teacher clarity around professional learning communities. And so part of that work really is the work of unpacking the standards. And so when we talk about unpacking a standard, we're looking at those SEs and we're really thinking about what is it conceptually that kids need to know and how do they need to show it? Well, the how they need to show it is informed by our assessments as well, right? So what we often tell teachers is there's no secret sauce, right? And assessments are not a secret. They should not be a secret. We should know the ways in which our kids are being assessed. And we've got to be able to play that game, right? So how do we get strategic around that? In addition to that, how do we think about the standards in terms of on the daily, what are going to be the learning objectives that we intend to really drive home with kids? What should we expect for them on that daily practice to walk away with? And then how are we going to measure that? So that's where exit tickets or formative assessments come into play in the daily practice. And there's a really key important part that has been a missing link for us, and that's that I do. That's that teacher model where teacher is really the expert, sees themselves as the expert in front of students, and we're having a conversation around what should we be doing during that teacher model, right? You need to have eyes on me, you know, I need you engaged, I need you tracking me, that kind of leadership language we need to continue to build with our teachers, and the why behind that. The teacher is the content expert. Every day in front of that 25 set of kiddos in elementary and in high school, we're impacting up to 130 or 150 kids every time that we're engaged in a teacher model. So how do we build clarity around that? You know, we're focused on learning, and this picture, I want to kind of walk you through this narrative in terms of what we're engaged in. This is Ms. Bada, who is our elementary math coordinator. I just have to lift and name her strengths. She comes to us from outside of the network. She is joined Edgewood ISD. She has been a campus principal before. She's been a district leader before. And so really trying to leverage her strengths. She is getting into classrooms along with our teachers. She's walking side by side with some of our teachers, and she's observing what materials and content is being put in front of kiddos to help inform then what moves do we need to refine with our instructional coaches, or perhaps professional learning that needs to come back to our teachers. What teacher clarity needs to occur. And in addition to that, based on the data that we just heard Mr. Barsuto present, where are those exemplar classrooms, and how do we get teachers to go and see the model, right? When teachers see the model and they see it in action, they can then look at teacher moves and think about what needs to get replicated in their own classrooms. So we're really thankful you saw some Loma Park data that really stood out. These are teachers engaged in a classroom at Loma Park and watching their peers do the work and then going back and reflecting. So Principal Cruz over at Stafford took some of her teachers over and got to see that in action. In addition to that, right, as business people, what we can relate to, if we invest in a program, we expect for there to be implementation of that program. And here we see Ms. Calhoun over at Bedalis Elementary, who is really operationalizing and celebrating iStation, because that's a heavy lift on the part of teachers. Teachers have to set up a system for that implementation. They also have to think about ways in which they are going to monitor that system and that resource. And then at the end of the day, what is it about? It's about celebrating the wins with kiddos and with parents. And so really excited to see that. And that's where we need to see all of our classrooms, right? Here in the Edgewood ISD. In addition to that, I named it as a key element, and that's not just, you know, the folks in this room who are naming it. This is research-based, right? When we talk about the gradual release model and that key component of the I do, we're now getting to the point where our teachers and our instructional coaches are working on scripting that I do. And in our professional learning communities, teachers are beginning to lead those conversations and engage in rehearsals, right? Because what we should not be doing is getting in front of kids and it's game time, right? When we're in front of kids, it's game time. And we are not rehearsing in front of kids. We need to be giving them the best version of that I do that we possibly can. That doesn't happen naturally and organically. We have to create spaces for that rehearsal to occur. And that's what we're doing in our PLCs. In addition to that, we took a proactive measure with our elementary, and we've been able to operationalize this for literacy. Here you see our teachers engaged in the daily planning, right? Sometimes we do the big picture planning, but we don't get to the day-to-day. What are going to be those moves that I'm making? And we see this benefiting our students, and when we look at our literacy data, we know that it's working, and we need to replicate that for our math classrooms. And so the focus on results goes back to the practices that we've engaged in and we've modeled for our principals. How do we model that? You see our instructional coaches, you see Dr. Carrion over at Loma Park leading the conversation, right? So as we're building our teacher capacity, we're also building the instructional leadership capacity to engage in those kinds of data conversations. We take the assessment, that's the question that we asked at the beginning, why an assessment strategy? And then what do we do with that data? We've got to take action. And here you see teachers then taking that into action in their planning sessions. So let's pull it all together, right? We've had this conversation earlier, we saw the second grade data, and we're saying like, whoa, what is happening in second grade? So going back to this idea of number sense and the trajectory around what kids need to know. This is early learnings, right, of math concepts. Subitizing in comparison, again, Joseph helped me out with that quick demonstration. But early as a child, we begin to understand visually and recognize a quantity of 5 or less, right? So when I think about that, I may think about dominoes, right? If I look at a domino, I can quickly recognize the count there. I may not understand what the relationship is yet with the one-to-one correspondence, but I can see then, and I can begin to compare quantities, right? These are foundational skills that are built early in pre-K and in kinder. So this visualization is that vertical alignment piece, right? So you see all these skills that kiddos needed to learn in kinder. By the time they get to first grade, what do you notice? Are we still covering those skills? Not as much, right? By the time they get to second grade, hardly, right? By the time we get to third grade, the kids have already learned and should have learned and are expected to know in order to challenge the more rigorous question types that we see in grade 2 and grade 3. So that's where we really see the drop-off. And so what are we doing then to examine the vertical alignment piece, and what's the implication if we don't take action on number sense? It's the same concept with reading and fluency, decoding skills, right? Math has that same kind of application. So what have we done differently? There's a foundational document that we have created to really structure that block and give teachers clarification, principals clarification, instructional coaches clarification in terms of what really should be happening. Every day when we walk into a math classroom, we should see number sense routines occurring, right? We have the resources available. Do we see it occurring? And if we don't see it occurring, why? what's the action step that we need to take to ensure that teacher is implementing number sense routines. We also have a new program that we are implementing this year, which is Zern Math. What we love about Zern Math is here's another opportunity yet for our teachers to be able to engage in small group instruction, and that's always been the rub, right, for us, is when teachers are away, when students, are away from teacher and they're working in small group instruction, what is the quality of what's happening when students are away from teacher? And so Zern Math gives us an opportunity to be able to have a tutor, it's not a live tutor, but a teacher who is actually teaching students. They're hearing, again, back to the vocabulary, they're listening, and they're engaged in practice. So we would expect to see that come back into that small group time. So being super clear with our teachers, super clear with our instructional leaders in terms of what we should see occur in a math block so that we can address the gaps.
One more thing on mathematics. And thank you, board. You approved the Math Foundations grant that we applied for and we got. And we've already assembled our committee and we're gonna get trained. And the whole idea is, along with the academics team and some teachers that we chose and principals, we're gonna devise a academics math plan for next year. Ways in which we can systemize all these processes for mathematics, because we know math is an issue system-wide, so we're gonna go back and revamp everything and start from the new math plan. So that's in the works to be rolled out next year. In the meantime, we're gonna do this to raise achievement today, but know that there's a more thoughtful plan coming in.
That's our next school year.
That's great. We're gonna start working on it now.
Thank you.
Good morning. So at this time, I would like to make a connection with all of the information that you've heard so far, from the data analysis to the assessment strategies to how the academics team are rolling out instructional practices in order to support schools. I'd also like to go deeper with targeted improvement plans. You've heard of the 3 plans that we have here in the district. We have the district improvement plan, which gives the guidance for how we will operationalize academic performance throughout the district and what our goals are. Those goals are also aligned to the board superintendent goals and our priorities, thus leading to the campus improvement plans. Both of these plans have already been approved by the board. So this month or next week, November the 15th, we'll be bringing forward targeted improvement plans for you to vote on. Targeted improvement plans are specific to individual campuses, and it's really based on the accountability system. So the target improvement plan is a structure that allows campuses to really analyze data, look at specific barriers that are impeding those campuses from reaching their school improvement goals. Target improvement plans are also chunked into 3 different sections throughout the year, in which there is a regular data analysis process that the campuses go through with TEA on a 3-month basis, in which we also have to submit specific artifacts that that we're using to show if what we're doing in the target improvement plan is actually working on the campus. So there are several schools that are working have been assigned a targeted improvement plan, and you'll notice here that you see some B and C rated campuses here on the screen. So pre-pandemic, or when the pandemic occurred, TEA required campuses that were already in a targeted improvement plan 2019 to remain in a targeted improvement plan for this school year. So that's why you have LBJ, Stafford, Loma, Winston Elementary School, and Gus Garcia here on the screen. Another thing I'd like to point out to you, that you see the 3 schools here at the bottom, they have that asterisk that says that they're not rated. If we had any campuses that scored at a D or an F this school year, they weren't rated due to a Senate Bill 1365, I believe. that requires the non-rating there, and reminding you that overall Edgewood is rated as a C district.
Winston?
I'm sorry?
Winston?
Yes, Winston is right here. Yeah. Thank you. In looking at the Effective Schools Framework, so when you're participating in the Target Improvement Plan process, our administrators go through a training in which is the Effective Schools Framework, where we focus on 5 different levers, and these levers are proven to be the different areas that campuses should work on in order to be successful. And what I'd like to do during this process is to make a connection between these levers and our academic plan, because you're going to see how we're actually implementing these levers on a day-to-day basis in our schools. The second part of this whole process is for campuses to go through a diagnostic plan as well as a survey to determine which of these levers that they should utilize and align their work in order to move the needle on campus. After they've created after they've established the diagnostic, then they create the targeted improvement plan, where they'll pick 2 indicators, essential actions, and this is a live link. I won't open it right now, but I'm going to give you a specific example of what that looks like on campus. We have our capacity builders. Targeted improvement plans are specifically about building capacity on the campus, aligning with campus leadership, systems, structures, as well as professional development for teachers. The plan also includes school improvement support, which is very similar to TNTP, which is a vetted improvement partner that we have. You're familiar with that. And you've also approved a vetted partner, which is Big Rocks or BRES. We've talked about that a few times at some of our board workshop meetings. So for instance, when all of our campuses went to training, they got together, they looked at the different indicators, they did their diagnostics, they reviewed their data. All of them had lever 5 in common, and they have the same indicator in common. So lever 5 is effective instruction, and it has 3 parts. It talks about job-embedded professional development. It talks about giving teachers time to be able to review their data, analyze data so that they're able to reflect, adjust, and deliver instruction that meets the needs of all students, okay? So the indicator that every targeted improvement plan campus in our district is working on is 5.3, data-driven instruction. So wherever you heard data-driven instruction before, you've heard it in various board workshops. We analyzed data just a few minutes ago. And as teachers continue to work in this area, as well as our leadership teams, you'll notice here, it's all about disaggregating data, monitoring the progress of all students, and providing evidence-based feedback to teachers. And so what I'd like to show you here is that we have a couple of different areas where we have our, this is 8th grade social studies PLC, working together to analyze their data, to develop plans to deliver instruction, okay? And then you have one of our principals here who is going over some of that beginning of year data at the beginning of the year, showing teachers how to utilize that data, how to make sense of it, and how do they make it come alive into their classrooms. The second part of this indicator is that we'll use PLCs to identify data trends in student misconceptions and determine the root cause. All of that is connected to our academic plan, the 2 parts, the guaranteed and viable curriculum, as well as focusing on Tier 1 instruction. And we're able to do all of this really because of the support that you've given us when we've come to you to ask for instance, you approved an additional 15 minutes last year to the school day for the, Wren and Brentwood. in order for them to have weekly PLCs. So those teams meet each week and they're discussing content and grade level norms and needs. And so part of this indicator is to have protected time built into the master schedule. And we have that at the middle schools thanks to you. We also have that time with our elementary schools that meet on a weekly basis, and then our high schools that meet every other week. In order to have regular in-depth conversations to discuss effective instructional practices, and that's where we are right now with our academic plan, because we are looking specifically at rigor. Dr. Silva referenced the I do statement, where teachers really need to focus on the I do so that kids can have that exposure to Tier 1 instruction. And we're also looking at student progress towards measurable goals. We just looked at those goals from the beginning of the year, the DBA 1, DBA 2, and then we're going to look at how we're performing with the interim assessment. And we'll move towards doing specific goal setting with our students. So right here you have Principal Sanchez leading a PLC at Brentwood Middle School. And then over here, this is a picture from a Stafford PLC where the principal is leading literary annotations. And so they're looking at the student success criteria so that they can all be on the same page and execute the plan once they get into the classroom. So everyone's working on 5.3. So I'm hoping that you'll see the connections with the academic plan and then how we're also supporting our targeted improvement plan campuses with the Effective Schools Framework. And so then some other areas of focus that we have are developing instructional leaders with clear roles and responsibilities, because we do have several new principals here in the district as well as assistant principals. And so we're developing systems to address their needs. We're still honing in on effective routines and instructional strategies, which are aligned to the academic plan, a compelling and aligned vision, mission, goals, values focused on a safe environment and high expectations. I believe JFK, this is the second indicator for JFK. And then daily use of high quality instructional materials aligned to the instructional planning calendars, interim assessments, and formative assessments. And the high quality instructional materials is specifically related to Musa, that's working with WISE and GUS. They have opted to utilize a new curriculum. One is Amplify and the other is Eureka on their campuses, and those are just high quality materials that TEA has pushed out. And so it's really become a big thing since COVID, I want to say, where TEA is really having input on high quality instructional materials. Not saying that what other campuses are using is not, but they're just doing something specific. Are there any questions? Okay. Ms. Balzo.
So at the board workshop, we went in depth over our course catalog, and one of the things that we wanted to go into further depth is our CTE programs of study. So in your packet, you'll have some examples of the TEA programs of study info sheets that have been published for this school year. They'll be these that have the pink highlighting. So these don't include all of the programs that we offer in Edgewood. This is just a sample. Once you get the presentation, you'll be able to click on the course catalog and you'll see all of them in there. So these information sheets are provided by TEA for all of the programs of study. I've included the ones that align to our programs of study in our course catalog. So the way that it's organized in our course catalog is you'll see the 4-year sequence, so that our students will be able to see all of their courses that they'll need as far as all of their graduation requirements. And then they'll be able to see how that aligns to the coherent sequences as far as their CTE. So if you look at this first example, it tells you that this is in the business and industry endorsement, and the particular pathway is digital communications or AV production. It'll also tell you which campus it's located. So there was a question at the board workshop as to whether it's clear or not where our programs are located. There's several instances throughout the course catalog to make sure that students, parents, community know exactly where our programs are located as far as campus. And then you'll see here that there's specific courses that are required for this program of study. They're broken down into level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Obviously, a student does not have time to take all of these courses. These are the suggested courses for this pathway. And then based on input from our industry partners, from our Institute of Higher Education partners, as far as Palo Alto and St. Philip's, through our advisory board, which they've met last week and this week. We've had our advisory meetings at the high schools. We garner their input, and that's how we've determined which courses we're going to offer here at Edgewood. So those are the ones that are highlighted. And then you can see the post-secondary opportunities that are available for students. And then on the right-hand side, I've highlighted the industry-based certifications that we offer here in Edgewood. At the bottom is the aligned occupations. There's been many questions as to, do we make this information available to our parents? And so they'll be able to see right here which occupations are available with these particular certifications, and the minimum wage and the growth according to the current labor market information. And so again, this is just a couple of samples of the pages that are included in our new and improved course catalog. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Do you think it would be valuable to share not only what the wage would be for that particular position, but what it looks like for promotion in that field, and what those dollars can look like? Because I know some of those people can end up running hotels, or just working through the training that the employer provides. We could sell those to make much more money than that.
Definitely, yes. And so this shows them the initial wage based on the certifications that we're offering.
Right.
And then through their coursework, their the CTE teachers definitely get more in depth as to what their possibilities
The
are.
career opportunities.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yes.
On the culinary arts,
Uh-huh.
we only offer one certification? Serve safety manager? Is that, am I looking at that right?
So that is the one that they get for IBC credit, but culinary arts is also part of our PTEC, and so they're going to be getting level 1 and level 2 certificates that are not listed on here. So those are part of the their college coursework. So as far as there are certifications that we get credit for as far as TEA for our CCMR points, and those are the ones that are listed here as far as industry-based certifications. And then we do get credit for the level 1, level 2 certificates as well. Those just don't happen to be listed on here specifically.
So those are part of the 60 hours toward the associate's
Correct.
degree that they have. So that's not listed for every CTE course that is across the state. The PTEC, they're allowed to take those 60 hours, which include those particular certifications.
Right.
Hence the PTEC, Pathways of Technology Early College High School, was that added industry certification that enhanced what we had in early college high school. So you have an early college high school, but now we're adding industry certification.
So, will we be able to get more of these certifications in the
Yes.
future?
Yes. Yes, these are just base certifications, and then based on what our teachers are covering, we can always add more certifications.
And that's why we're looking at, getting people from industry is a challenge. Getting a computer scientist is a challenge. What we do have to offer is we have the days, if they have young children, sometimes we see them opt for teaching. And also, Ms. Balabu was working on what that incentive pay might look like for, let's say, a nurse or a computer scientist, right? So all these particular jobs are very challenging in terms of tracking the industry and the teaching industry.
Is it possible to partner up with employers out there where there might be some funding? I know we've talked about, how all of this is going to be sold to the community so we can get more kids, coming in, raise enrollment. And if there's a little funding from employers, because they want to have that pipeline where, Edgewood can fill the spots that they have, maybe that can help us to promote the offerings at Edgewood.
Absolutely, and in fact, part of the PTAC is that we need to have documented MOUs with industry partners, so, definitely.
Bowling is, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna ask regarding the culinary. So what happened to the Hernandez brothers? Weren't they in Edgewood trying to help? And I know he just posted not too long ago that he needed employees. And so we need to connect that because they're graduates from Memorial.
Yes.
Yeah, they're actually starting a business out here on Highway
Yeah.
90.
Yeah, they have several. They're in the airport everywhere. They have money now.
Yes, we've been in communication with them.
And their brother, actually the brother's the one that does a lot of the conversation, the
Yeah.
old head of catering business.
But he's also very involved in community. The brother.
Okay, next I'll turn it over to Mr. Rodriguez.
Good morning, everyone. So this morning I'm going to share with you some of the assessments that we offer as part of advanced academics. These may be some that you're familiar with already, but we have a contract with College Board that allows us to assess our students in the SAT assessment, PSAT, and MSQT, which is the National Merit Scholar Qualifying Test, all part of College Board that leads to the trajectory towards National Merit Scholar that I'm going to explain in just a little bit. So of course, we want to make sure we're offering our students our opportunities, and part of that opportunity towards the road towards National Merit Scholar is these assessments. And so you'll see that the different assessments start with PSAT 8-9, which is the grade level, so 8th grade or 9th grade. Goes down to 10th grade, 11th, and 12th. PSAT 8-9 is offered when students are in middle school and 8th grade. What it really does is gives us a baseline on how college ready are our students as early as 8th grade. We know that when they enter 9th grade, they have opportunities in early college high school, opportunities in PTAC and dual credit. We want to make sure that those students that are college ready based on the assessment result are tracked and targeted toward those particular programs of interest. And then also making sure that based on those results, we're offering advanced placement courses for them. That the honors, AP courses are on their track. They'll then take the assessment again in 10th grade. This allows us to get information on how much have they grown since that 8th grade year, 9th grade year, and also gives us a baseline towards how well are they going to do once they get to 11th grade. Because once they get to 11th grade and take that assessment, which is called PSAT and MSQT 11, that's when they'll be able to be recommended for certain recognition. So you know that at Edgewood EISD this year we've had National Hispanic Recognition Awardees, and we all recognize them at the board meeting. This particular assessment result is what allows those students to be recognized for that particular recognition. This assessment then leads to the actual SAT assessment in 12th grade. The result in combination in 12th with their 11th grade will then allow us to move from a semi-finalist position to an actual National Merit Scholar. So we wanted to make sure that we've shared this with y'all. We're also going to be sharing it with parents around what are the assessments that we offer, what is the purpose of the assessments, and that students go in more informed, parents go in knowing how to encourage, what to encourage. When we send out flyers saying, get rest, tonight's the PSAT assessment, they have a better understanding of what that means for their child. Because when they lead through this track, and we offer the supports in between each assessment, we know we're getting closer to making sure students are showing their full potential towards National Merit Scholar. And like you know, in the last couple of years, we actually had our own National Merit semifinalists at Memorial High School. So we know the potential is there. We want to make sure that parents are aware and that district leaders are aware of what do we offer, Why are we taking so many tests? There's really a purpose behind this to make sure that when they get here to 12th grade, their scores and everyone's aware of what the potential is and that they're meeting those expectations that we have for them. Part of that process is also honoring dual credit, so giving you acknowledgement around the increase in dual credit stipend. We know that we got to make sure that teaching is attractive to teachers, and especially teaching in these particular areas, dual credit courses that offer college credit. At the end of the day, it offers college savings, time savings for our students, and make sure that they're getting college credit here in high school with our programs. And so when we offer dual credit stipends, on top of the increased salary, the master's degree stipend that we give them, and as well as how $600 per course that they teach. So if they're teaching a dual credit course, they get our stipend plus $600 per course that they're teaching as well. So lots of incentive that obviously increases what that take-home pay is going to be. And making sure that we're attracting quality people into Edgewood, and especially into our college level courses.
Well, Mr. Rodriguez, before you move on forward, we do want to thank you because that is the item you voted on last month. And so this is a visual of what these stackable stipends and income does for our teachers. You know, we talked about one of the challenges right now with teachers, besides support, there's also livable wages. And so you see what that is now, based on your actions, so thank you.
No,
Sorry, I gotta go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. I was speaking to a group of about 100 UTSA students yesterday who asked that very question. Should we get a master's as we're going forward? And it was a great opportunity to put this up on the organization. Wow. And
So where does that put us, you know, with other districts, you know, in terms of what we're offering financially?
Pretty competitive, because I think what typically we're seeing is like $1,000 or $2,000 stipend for this particular area, so it's pretty significant. Even with something that we offer with bilingual compared to what we're doing in the Southwest, what they're doing in the Southwest is pretty comparable. So I think we're being very competitive when we're offering these stipends in these particular areas that are very targeted and kind of a niche. There's also the other benefit to this is that we get to hire teachers, and our teachers become the college teacher versus getting the instruction from a college professor. They do a great job. At the same time, they don't really totally understand that this is still a high school student taking college level courses, where our own high school teachers understand there's supports that need to be in place to make sure that they're successful and not treat them just as a true college student, but a high school and college student at the same time. A little bit of a breakdown. So when our students take a dual credit course, just taking one particular course costs $300. And I think what we've talked to, but what we've talked to parents about and students about as we've presented to them these programs and the offerings is Edgewood ISD takes the cost for this. So you're saving having that cost savings at home, and parents are wondering, well, how am I going to pay for it? Let's wait a little bit. Well, no, we're doing it for you. And this is just a simple breakdown. So if you take one course, just for the course alone, we're saving you $300 for that one particular course. When you think about our students that are in ECHS or PTEC who take several courses to get to that associate's degree in those 60 hours of credit courses alone, we're saving them $6,000. So that's been a big eye opener for parents too, and seeing that's how much it costs, and I don't have to pay that. It's not on you, it's on Edgewood ISD with the commitment we have in the partnership to make sure that our students in underrepresented areas are really having access to college education. And so this has been a great eye opener for our parents and the continued partnership to get and to keep in our enrollment with our programs. The bigger picture to that is thinking about John F. Kennedy Memorial High School, who have established early college high school programs, students who are going through and graduating with their associate's degree. The cost savings there is much bigger. So this is just for courses alone, $6,000. This particular tuition and fees waived. You think about when you're enrolling as a college student, there's library fees, parking fees, the cafeteria fee, and then textbooks, whether they're virtual books or hard copy. All of that plays into tuition and fees that they don't have to pay for. And so that is a definite benefit to them. That's an eye-opener to them around how much savings they're having. So with the particular cohort that graduated in 2020, 2021 with their associate's degree, with that cohort we were able to save those families $332,127.80. Compared to Memorial, just because of different enrollment numbers, still a significant number of savings, which is $240,601. And then altogether, $572,729 that we saved our families that they didn't have to obviously take out of pocket, have more time to save for when they get their bachelor's, and it's just a little more manageable and reasonable. So we moved that conversation from we'll have to wait for college to let's do this, and we have time to really plan for it. So great things are happening. parents are getting informed, and I get really excited about sharing this, so thank you. Ms. Salinas?
I have a question regarding that slide that you just showed.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we post that like on Facebook, social media?
We can, yes, and this also comes from the dashboard from the colleges themselves, because they're promoting that as well. So yes, we can start posting that on our own social media, and making sure parents are informed, the community is.
I have a question. It seems to me that Memorial, you know, in recent years has been outpacing Kennedy with, you know, monies. Why would Memorial be less than Kennedy?
So it was by their enrollment. So that particular graduating class was a little bit smaller than the one for John F. Kennedy High School that particular year.
That was 2020, 21. I want to be clear about that.
So not last year's, but the year
Yeah, we
before.
should be getting the one for last year shortly.
Thank you.
I'm at the tail end of finalizing and wrapping up this board performance meeting. What I'm going to do today is just kind of let you know where we are in terms of the strategic plan. So as you know, we had a timeline, a rollout timeline on how we were going to build this strategic plan that was inclusive of the 3 HB3 goals that we have, our Lone Star governance goals, and the 2 local goals that we felt mattered to our community. And so in November, we want to be able to, and I'm going to do that right now, kind of share the draft of the goal progress measures for each of the 2 local goals that you all board approved back in September. So remember in August we had the workshop where you all brainstormed the goals, or things you wanted us to measure. And then we came back to you and said, here's some potential goals based on 2 key outcomes that you wanted to see happen in our community. One was that we empowered families, right? That we opened up our doors, had more 2-way communication with families that was not just survey-based, but really authentic conversation around how we can improve, how we better connect with the community. And then the other thing was, how do we really prepare students, right? How do we empower students with not just the academic aptitude, but real life readiness skills? What do we do to help them have resilience when they leave us and go to college? And so I'm going to be sharing kind of where we are in terms of the GPMs and the state of those GPMs right now. I'm gonna share with you just a little bit about kind of the next step and really what we're gonna do after this, after you all look at the goal progress measures. There's a couple that we still kind of refining. Remember, there's a lot of vetting that has to take place. And so this is kind of our SLT best thinking, right? We've talked a little bit to some of the directors or key people that are going to be responsible for executing, for monitoring these goal progress measures. And then the final piece is really getting with our new assessment team, Mr. Ernest Rees, and I forgot the new guy's name that came on board, and to really make sure that there's some validity to how we're going to be able to capture and measure the impact. Because one of the key things that's really important about the strategic plan is being able to have multiple checks along the way so that we can ensure that the key strategies that we said we were going to do in the plan are really working, right? On the onset and then throughout the tenure of the plan. So the next thing we want to be able to do after we get these GPMs, in good condition to bring to you is we're going to bring the strategic plan to you for approval in December. We'll kind of share what that strategic plan looks like. We'll have the GPMs finalized, and then we will start working with the teams, the individual teams, like the operations department, to create their own kind of work plan around how do they contribute to the Lone Star governance goals and to the local goals. And then we will have full launch in 23, where every stakeholder understands the impact of this plan. I do want to say that the strategic plan there's a lot of intentionality in ensuring that it's directly aligned to the district improvement plan, right? Because the district improvement plan is, federally connected. There's all kinds of other things that have to be in that plan. What we wanted to do with the strategic plan is align the big levers in the district plan, but make it a real succinct kind of operational document, okay? Any questions on this before I move on? Because I'm gonna kind of just go through the goals at this point. Okay. So these are the HB3 goals. We're gonna start with our 3 goals. These are the goal progress measures, right, for our 3 House Bill 3 goals. This is goal 1. You guys have seen these. Then we have goal 2 and the GPMs for goal 2, and these are the ones that are we've been kind of working on that have gone through a couple of revisions. We have goal 3, and now for goal 1, we actually have 3 goal progress measures that we've been kind of working through. You'll see here, remember I said we've got to do some vetting here. We know that this is important. We felt this was really important to measure the authentic touch points that we've been having. I mean, you just had the picnic or dinner with the police. That was an amazing event. There were about 200 people there, right? That conversation, we want to be able to capture all those things that we do, the women with vision, the faith-based community. And so right now we're looking at, okay, how many of those events did we do? What was the participation rate? So that we can create a baseline for how we continue to improve that. And so we're going to kind of work through this, but this is essentially SMART goals that you see here. We wanted to be consistent with the SMART goals in HB3. The challenge is these are kind of hard to measure when you're looking at our local goals. Okay, so there they are. The other thing we felt was really important was this continued focus on financial stewardship. If essentially we want families to say that I would recommend Edgewood ISD to a friend or a family member, then we know that our marketing and branding and our judicious financial spending, right, is going to have an impact. Things like ACE, where you're paying $10,000 more for a stipend, that impacts student achievement, right? People feel better about the school, improved culture. So we want to continue to work through this this piece within this component. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
That we're gonna come back, and I'm having a separate conversation with Mr. Chavez, I apologize. We need to come back and figure out if the first rating is a better measure, or is it fund balance? Because when we talk about impact on what we do, we have a lot of conversations about the money that we invest, and we're very upfront with the board that this may impact fund balance, right? If we're touching a building, but if we're adding resources for dual credit, for example, how is that sustainable? So a better measure may be looking at our fund balance and how we're using those dollars over the next 5 years to impact student achievement, as opposed to the first rating that comes out once a year. So I think for progress measuring, a better base might be our fund balance, Ms. Salinas, as opposed to, so we're just having that conversation that by the time we come to the board to finalize these things, that the goals that we've set forward make sense, and that we can bring something every quarter to say, this is where we're at. So I apologize for the interruption, that's what we were
No, that's okay. And I think
discussing back here.
Yeah, and I think the intent here is at this point, because these are kind of draft, right? They haven't come before you for approval, that we want to be able to really think critically about where we are in this point in time. The other one here is to increase participation in surveys. This is really important for us because there's a strategy that we engage in through the system of great schools that really says to districts, you have to be able to provide evidence that you are garnering voice in the community, voice from staff, voice from students. And so we've really started to think about how we can do a better job of this, because we have the TNTP surveys, we have all the pláticas and everything, which is authentic engagement, and then we have this end of the year survey that's super lengthy that we haven't got a whole lot of response rate on over the last several years. And so we're really kind of going through how we combine all those efforts. Any questions here before I move on? Yes, ma'am.
So, in all the work that I'm involved with, whether it's community health or now this is education, we always say, if it's not documented, it doesn't exist. And I know that the story behind the data is very important, but how do we keep track? Like, I was at the police event, and I had conversations, so how do we keep track of all that that's being said? I've never seen a sign-in sheet, or I mean, and that might be old school, or I don't know, but in my world, it still exists, you know? If it's not written, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But what's more important to me, and I remember in the first Plática that I attended, how do we capture what the people are telling us? And I'm not saying not everybody's willing to speak to the whole group or to the person that's leading it, but the side conversations that happen here, because a lot of times those are more powerful. Because I was at that event and I was speaking with 2 promotoras that have children in the district. So, and Roy was there. And so there's a lot of community conversations that I was wondering, how do we capture that?
Mind if I?
No, go for it.
That's a very good question. And I noticed the same thing. As a matter of fact, I shared with the team before we got started this morning how powerful that was. One, we saw some students from other schools, IDEA, walking around. We saw some students from St. John Bosco there. We had parents asking, you know, I send my student to the kindergarten, and they have speech services. And, oh, by the way, we have those. There was a 5-year-old, parent of a 5-year-old, or a 4-year-old, who said, I pay so much for daycare, and, you know, I said, well, we have an actual education program. And so all these things, and the other thing that came across was, a couple of teachers that I spoke to, actually 3 teachers I spoke to, said, why don't we have a place here, a table, we had several tables, but have a table there that has all our schools. All of our schools, and we had conversations just like this maybe 2 weeks ago about that, but time is ticking on and we didn't get that, right? And the other thought was, maybe we have like 5 iPads that we can have, or more of this, so we ask very basic question like you said, right? What do you think is working well? What things do you might want to improve? And what recommendations do you have? And asking the final question for this, what's it called? There it is, Net Promoter Score. Ask that question, you know, would you recommend Edgewood to a friend? And I agree, that's a perfect, basically, everybody there loved that event. And they would have had nothing but positive things to say, but we can also capture what they want to say also.
I'm sorry, but I'm sorry I was late to begin with. You know, it's better because we're almost done. If I had been here, maybe we would have stayed all day. But let me just share a little bit, please.
Yeah.
So there was not an argument, but a discussion between 2 mothers. One of them was comparing what's happening here to California, because obviously she comes from California, and she was saying, like, they were more advanced over there. And, I mean, it's good, but I think this district still needs more. And the other one jumped, talking about the promoter. The other one jumped and said, you don't understand all the great things that are happening in Edgewood compared to the way things were before. We've improved a lot. There's a lot of options for our children. We communicate. Look at us. We came to meet the policemen. You know, these things are better for our district, and I know that better things are going to happen. So to me, that's a promoter, and just call them promotoras, but anyway.
A little plug.
I know I have to do plug it here, okay? But you know, yeah, we need to hear more about that.
Absolutely, and we've had a lot of conversations as we're kind of recognizing all of these things, because we have this big school choice calendar of events that's a big Gantt chart that has all of the things we're doing. And so as we started to plug all of our data in, we were like, man, we're missing opportunities. Yes. And so I had a conversation with Olga. Phil and I have had a lot of conversations, so we're gonna start to do a better job of educating everyone and arming everyone who is out in the community with a few key tools that they can immediately use. That conversation you overheard, great, can we capture that? Here's a QR code, scan it, and please answer these 4 questions for us. We want to capture your voice, right? And so how do we continue to make sure everybody has that tool or resource so they know how to quickly step in and help us garner that feedback, because it's a lot, right? Yes, it would be both in English and Spanish. So work to be done there, for sure. And then this last one here, the goal was around using the Naviance system. So Naviance is a college career ready life system that students can go in and take assessments to better understand themselves as learners, as leaders, as individuals. It also helps them track, you know, to see where jobs are, to be able to go in and check their 4-year plans. It's connected to all of the other systems. And so what we felt was really important is that we put some goal progress measures, since there's so many different competencies, right? And we're gonna measure all of them. Like our overall goal says that we want 85% of our students to at least have taken this assessment, right? Then what we wanted to be able to do is create some goal progress measures around those that we wanted to prioritize this year. Remember, this is a heavy lift, right? And it's intended to be strategic, which means we have to be strategic in the way that we give, you know, the challenge, right, to schools and to students, and the way that we are very accountable for these results. We wanted them to be measurable too, so we started with 3 from the Naviance toolkit that we were going to use as the first 3 goal progress measures. So much like the district improvement plan, the strategic improvement plan is meant to be a living document, and what that means is that we're constantly going in, analyzing our practices and processes, and we're making shifts. So we might say, man, we have to add another goal progress measure, and so we'll continue to work through that. We wanted to start with 3 heavy ones that we knew were aligned already to our work, so that we can put this plan in motion for the next school year. So this is really all that I had. Do you all have any questions on the strategic plan?
Can I share something? Recently, we attended that training at Region 20. The 3 of us were there. And one of the things that I learned, we had a board member from Heights, and we had a board member from, I don't know, a small district that lived down south. And what we learned engaging with them was that there's total disconnect between what's happening in the schools with the board. And the board, you know, what we picked up on is that each one, you know, comes in with, you know, their box of, you know, things that I want the district to do. And so they're all coming in that way. And when Ed Vada was saying, you know, have you done these things? And we're talking about basic things like goals that you guys were talking about. And we've always been very consistent with that. You all brought that to us. And of course, it all made sense and it all gets approved. But no, they said, no, we've been too busy. They've been too busy to put some goals together. And that's so basic and fundamental. You know, I mean, that's kind of where you start. You know, what is it that you want to do? So, you know, and I'm sure the districts are doing wonderful work, but it looks like the board and you know, the folks in the school district are just not connected. And I just want to thank you all for all of the hard work that you all do. This is amazing stuff that you guys do. Be able to, you know, gather all this stuff, put it strategically together, make it all work. And I think that's what makes it so easy for this board to, you know, not come in with all kinds of, you know, you know, I want to do all this, I want to do all this, because everything you say makes so much sense. And the way you guys are presenting this information, it makes it so easy to understand. And it makes sense. It makes sense. So I'm going to thank you for that, because I know that takes a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as Ms. Smith said, this is the end of our presentation again. As I said at the very beginning, this is an incredibly dynamic and intellectual group that you have here that presented to you. And they do spend a lot of time, and these are our days. The work that you see here is constantly, every day, all the time. So thank you. I want to thank my colleagues for the work that they did in putting this together. We will see you again in January. Yes. By that time, we'll have the results of our STAR interim. We'll have the results of our DBA 2 and do we have 3 million? No. So we'll have those results to share with you. And we'll use a similar format and also give you an update of where are they now, right? So thank you very much and greatly appreciate it. Dr. Hernandez?
May I say something before we, sorry. I want to tell you that it's been an honor to serve as your president because I've seen all the hard work that you all do. And I want to tell you that it's not a job, it's not just a job because you have to really have a heart and believe in this, to be able to work those many hours. And because sometimes for me, I carry all that other stuff like I mentioned, but this is a lot, but I need to stay focused and I need to be with you, walk with you so that I can understand it. But everywhere I go, I'm told good things are happening in Edgewood. Y'all are doing a great job. Sometimes they tell me, you're doing great, Martha, you're doing a lot of good work. I go, wait a minute, it's not me. It's easy to support when good work is being done, but it takes a lot of people. It's a great team, the superintendent having this vision, this heart, this dedication, and then just being a good leader for all of us to follow. I mean, I know that as a team, y'all help each other, which is the best way to work. That's a very powerful team. And the way that she gave some information and you accepted it, and I'm okay, I love it, because that means, you know, we need to see all perspectives. And whether it's funding, whether it's document, data, it's all important. And I love the way that y'all work, and thank you for that, because I know that ultimately, who's gonna benefit? Who's gonna benefit from all the work that y'all do? Kids. The kids. And that's all the reason that I'm here for. I don't care about anybody else's agenda. It's about the kids having opportunity and having a chance to be successful in life, because we've been down too long, no more. And so I thank you all for that.
Thank you, ma'am. So I want to echo from what the board president just mentioned with regards to this work. This work is fundamental to the work we do to support kids. It is. But I also want to honor the original request board that you made of myself 5 years ago when I came in. It was, we want to create legacy in the governorship of our district. So 5 years later, this work is the embodiment of that. This also helps you govern, make sure that you keep your one employee, the superintendent, accountable for the work that's being done. What will that do? It creates legacy in our school district. So that when people come onto the board, just like Mr. Soto mentioned, you may come in with one set of an agenda, if you will. You may think you're coming in for certain things, but you're setting an expectation. Everything from attending these meetings to when you go to the state conferences and you present alongside us, it changes the dynamic and the expectation of the governing body of a district let's face it, we've had challenges in our history. We've had a lot of social justice agendas, which have given us the brand, if you will, of our district. But you engaging in these meetings, and I say that because I know we're going to send this video to our other board members, is part of the work, especially as we now engage our new board member that is coming on next week. And we also culturalize him into what's already happening into this group. So thank you for that. Board, I do want to point out a couple of things. So this is now the second meeting you've had as part of these board performance planning meetings with academics and leadership. You notice Ms. Martinez is here for a reason. This is all stackable information we're trying to make very practical for you, so that when you are out in Edgewood, you have information so that when, to Mr. Espinosa's point, if somebody comes to you and says, well, this, and that, I'm hearing this, and our scores are still low, you have information that you can share with them. Acknowledge the challenge, because it's there, we can't hide from that. But also acknowledge that there's work being done, and as a governing member of this body, here's the information that's being provided to me. Also remind them, these are recorded, they're online. To the recommendation of Ms. Camacho, who's moving off the board, can we put these online so we can direct people to them? Absolutely. This is the work that you are investing in. Again, you're creating an expectation for future people that want to get on this board who may or may not have an agenda that supports the work of our school district. So thank you to this team. I'll continue to echo the work that was done. Thank you to each one of you for making this practical. To our business and operations folks that will be coming in next month, they'll prepare you with what's coming in regards to staffing. We're about to start staffing, planning, budgeting, As soon as we hit January, you know how we do this, every 6 months of conversations, and then in June, you'll approve that budget if we bring you the information you need to approve it. And so thank you to this team. Also, to our board members that aren't here, thank you for watching this video, and we're gonna share this video with all members of the senior leadership team, so they can see it. There was a lot of good feedback you provided. For example, we were just talking about Pláticas. I just sent a text to Ms. Maculas. You need to watch this video. There's great feedback at the end for you and your department. And so again, board members, thank you for your feedback. We will close out with that, Ms. Castillo. And that brings an end to this meeting.